All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ohio Student Farm panel presentation portion of Ohio University's second annual Farm to Institution Summit. I'm Jordan Nisley from Rural Action, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'd just like to let everyone know that there will be a section for questions at the end of the presentation. So we ask that if you have any questions for the panel, feel free to leave them in the chat, and I'll make sure our presenters hear them. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Tiffany Harvey. Tiffany is a second-year graduate student studying environmental studies. She has served as a graduate assistant for the Farm to Ohio initiative for the past 2 years. Her role has included expanding good agricultural practices certification among local farmers who must obtain certification to sell their produce to Ohio University Culinary Services. Guided by a belief in a robust local food system and appreciation for agriculture, she has successfully maintained GAP certification at the student farm, supervised student workers at the Ohio Student Farm, and assisted many local farmers with obtaining and maintaining their GAP certification. She hopes to have her own farm in the future where she can apply the skills she has learned while working at the Ohio Student Farm. Take it away, Tiffany.
Great, thank you, Jordan. That was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. I am about to share my screen here. Hopefully it works. All right. As Jordan said, I am the Farm to Ohio's graduate student, and I have done a lot of work at the student farm, and I generally really love the student farm and enjoy being there, and I think it's great. So I'm very excited to share with you guys a virtual farm tour of the Ohio Student Farm. If you would like to go back and look at this virtual tour, you can do that by going to the Summit's website. A link for it will be there, so you can look through more of the pictures that are on here if I don't get to them. So the Ohio Student Farm is located at West State Street in Athens, Ohio. So it's located on the western part of town, and originally it was started as a learning garden in the 1970s by Dr. Jim Cavender. And originally it was just the circle garden that you can see it on the map that's up in the upper left-hand corner. And later on it was expanded into the other areas that you can see on the map. And most of that expansion was done around 2015, whenever the farm became more production focused. And in its most profitable year, we made about $12,000. And the farm is mostly organic, but it's not certified organic. In more recent years, we've been maintaining our GAP certification, which, as you've already heard, is a food safety certification that's required for food to be purchased for OU Culinary Services. We had a lot of challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic, so a lot of 2020 consisted of donating our produce to local food pantries through CFI, and also donations to international students. And more recently, we are back to more normal operations, and we are trying to build our capacity through applying to some grants, and primarily we want to establish a farm manager. Again, GAP is a major part of the Farm to Institution initiative because it's required by the OU Culinary Services. My role at the student farm, again, is to help implement some of these things. So a lot of the signs that are at the student farm related to food safety are signs that I put up. This kiosk that you're looking at here, it was put there to remind visitors to wash their hands, and it also lets people know where the hand washing stations are and some other general GAP protocols. One of the major things that the student farm does is it offers students experiential learning, which I can say from personal experience is wonderful, and it was one of my favorite experiences that I've had overall. I worked out at the student farm over the summer, and I supervised several interns that were there. There were a few plant biology interns, and there were also community work study students, and we had AmeriCorps Vistas there at times. And also during the school year, we also have some plant biology interns as well. And I think that I can speak for everyone when I say that it's a wonderful experience, and it's generally really fun getting to learn about all of the biology that is at the farm, and getting to see the results of your hard work, and get to enjoy the fruits of your labor, literally. In addition to that, we do a lot of work with donations to CFI, and CFI is Community Food Initiatives, which is a nonprofit that works to distribute food to pantries in our region. Last year, we donated around 785.5 pounds to CFI, and most of that was potatoes and butternut squash and other more shelf-stable foods. And you can see in these pictures that a lot of CFI volunteers help us out with these harvests. And in addition to CFI, we also make donations to Cat's Cupboard as well, which is an on-campus student pantry. The Ohio Student Farm is also a wonderful place for research and student learning opportunities. So most recently, there's been some research being done there with spent grain, and the research involves figuring out if spent grain is a good fertilizer for different crops. Specifically, the research has been done on beets and spinach and green beans, at least the research that I've seen and been involved with. Also, there are several different plant biology courses who come there to supplement their classes. Sustainable agriculture, plant ecophysiology, plant pathology, plant breeding, and the biology of fungi are all classes that come to the student farm to learn about different things at the farm. In addition, the farm offers a lot of volunteer opportunities for students. We have some community nutrition class service learning that happens, and we also have a lot of sororities, fraternities, and other student organizations who volunteer as well. Rural Action is one of our major community partners that we have worked with. Last year, we sold about $4,355 worth of produce to the Chester Hill Produce Auction, and Rural Action made it very convenient for us because they actually delivered our produce for us and picked it up directly from the farm every Monday and Thursday. So that was really convenient for us. They also provided AmeriCorps Vistas to help with operations and harvesting, which was also extremely helpful. The Ohio Student Farm is a major part of the Farm to Institution initiative. We sell a lot of produce to culinary services, as I mentioned before, and all this produce has to be GAP certified. And because our farm is already GAP certified, it serves as a great example for other farmers to see what a GAP certified operation looks like. We also work a lot with local businesses, including Pork and Pickles, and Becky Clark is here today from Pork and Pickles. So if you have any questions about what it's like for a business to work with a student farm, you can ask her those questions. Last year, we sold about $3,211 worth of produce to local businesses. So we're very fortunate to have local businesses who believe in supporting the student farm. The farm door is something that is always really interesting to people who visit the farm, so I wanted to talk about it a little bit. It was created in the 1990s. It's created from a spool, and it has custom hinges from a local metal worker. And the circular design is supposed to correspond with the circular design of the Circle Garden, it's one of my favorite features. I think it's beautiful and whimsical and magical, and a lot of people agree with me. So also, the Circle Garden is a really awesome feature of the student farm. It is the original part of the student farm, as I mentioned earlier, established by Dr. Jim Cavender, and it's surrounded by bamboo that was planted there as a windbreak, and there is a bald cypress tree in the center of it that is meant to be the focal point. The High Tunnel was funded in 2014, and it was completed in 2015, and it's been very beneficial for extending the growing season for a lot of crops and also preventing some diseases related to some crops being exposed to more elements outside. The rest of this presentation has a lot of pictures of different species of animals that we have found on the student farm. So you can look through that whenever you want to by finding this on the Summit website. And we also have some of the best produce I've ever seen. So I highly recommend looking through this stuff because I certainly enjoyed seeing all these pictures. And that is all that I have for my presentation.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah, thank you, Art.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that wonderful presentation. Lots of beautiful photos. Now it's time to turn things over to the rest of our panel, starting with Nally. Mary is a native of Southeast Ohio and has personal experience in contributing to the sustainability of the region by developing strong community resiliency. Mary holds a Master's of Science in Environmental Studies and a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work from Ohio University. Social justice issues have been the driving force of her career. For 10 years, she has worked with people experiencing homelessness, chemical dependency, and brain disorders before returning to Ohio to focus on community health policy and food and justice issues. Mary serves on the Athens Regional Food Policy Council, Athens Healthy Community Coalition, and is a board president of the Athens Metropolitan Housing Authority and board chair member at Hocking Athens Perry Community Action. That's a lot of titles.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you. And as Jordan said, I'm kind of coming to this panel both in my current role as Director of Center for Campus and Community Engagement, but also from my previous role working in this community and region regarding food justice and food access issues. As before coming to Ohio University, I was the Executive Director of Community Food Initiatives. And prior to that, was a graduate student and actually begged to take Dr. Trese's sustainable agriculture classes. It was quite relevant to the research I was doing for my thesis at the time. So I've been connected to this farm in a lot of different ways, and I'm just really here to share, from my role when I was with Community Food Initiatives, just the fact that the vast majority of student interns and national service members, both AmeriCorps members and VISTA members, that Community Food Initiatives would wind up hiring were 99% all students who had completed the sustainable agriculture class. That not only demonstrated to us in the interview process that they had had some hands-on experience before working on a farm and working in agriculture, but it was also very evident to me when I was doing those interviews and working with those student interns and AmeriCorps members that taking this class and their experience at the Ohio Student Farm was indeed a very watershed or pivotal moment in their academic interests and in their prospects for their future careers. So in Community Food Initiatives also has partnered over many years working with Dr. Trese and others related to the Ohio Student Farm to collaboratively host and facilitate educational workshops on all of the variety of aspects of gardening, from identifying pests in your garden to understanding how seed saving can occur and why it's important, and many, many other subjects, which have been, those workshops are not only for Ohio University students, but the general public as well. But any opportunity that we have to host a workshop like that at the Ohio Student Farm is in and of itself a very exciting opportunity, because as you can see from the photographs, it is just a very compelling environment in which to be in. And I wanted to also share that from the perspective of other alumni that have taken the sustainable agriculture class and been engaged with the Ohio Student Farm, that their experience at this farm really do leave a lasting impact. So I wanted to share just a handful of quotes from you. One from Badger Johnson, who is an alumni from the class of 2011 and is the current Sugarbush Farm Transition Manager and Climate Resilience Coordinator. He shared with me that the Ohio Student Farm taught me about the value of managing soil fertility with cover crops. So that's really what stood out to him. Joy Kostanzik, who she graduated with a bachelor's in 2018 and her master's in 2020, and she's the current program coordinator of the campus food pantry at the University of Cincinnati. She shared that the farm was the spot on campus where I connected my classroom lessons to real experiential learning, leaving me with a holistic and well-rounded education. And finally, I have a quote from Janice Brewer, class of 2015, who is currently the assistant market manager at the West Asheville Tailgate Market, a farmer's market in North Carolina. They shared, quote, "It is because of the Ohio Student Farm that I continued on my farming journey that led me to be the farm manager of a 6-acre farm in Fairview, North Carolina, called Root Cause Farm, growing an acre of organic produce directly for donation. I will always think of the Ohio Student Farm and Dr. Art Trese as an origin point," end quote. So from the vantage point that I now have in this current role as Director of Community Engagement at our institution, I've been working very closely with our Office of Experiential Learning, because it's easy at a farm like this to identify so many opportunities for experiential learning to happen, and just the evidence of the multitude of experiences that have already taken place on this plot of land that is this learning lab, if you will. So whether it's identifying additional classes to utilize this space, potential for either faculty-driven or student-driven research projects, events, as well as co-curricular internships the farm offers. This is really a space for some intensive high-impact learning that has benefits to the institution and to our broader community. Currently, our office supports the farm's capacity through coordinating community work-study internships, primarily for undergraduate students. And then we've also, for the last several years, financially sponsored summer graduate student internships to, again, add some capacity and supervision across the farm. I would also be remiss if I did not emphasize how the Ohio Student Farm helps our campus and community fight food insecurity through their donations to our campus food pantry Cat's Cupboard and to the CFI donation station that distributes this locally sourced food to emergency food programs across the region. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to Jordan.
Thank you, Mary. Our next speaker is Becky Clark, who is the owner, butcher, and executive chef of Pork and Pickles, a company she founded in 2016 with the mission to create a unique food experience that both expands the palate of her diners and holds up the local agricultural community. She believes in partnerships of equality, superb products in exchange for sustainable income. Clark uses food as a platform to shed light on issues of economics, climate change, and social justice. She believes everyone has a right to healthy, delicious food and fair wages, and uses her company to approach that one bite at a time. In addition to her own company, Clark is the executive chef at Little Fish Brewing Company, a restaurant consultant, a mentor for Rural Action's Whole Farm program, the newest member of the Community Food Initiatives Board, and a proud OU alumni. Her menus at Pork and Pickles and Little Fish center around local seasonal food, what the farmers have available at any given time. The Ohio University Student Farm is one of her favorite sources of fresh produce. In her spare time, Clark is a loving partner, dog mom, aunt, daughter, granddaughter, and friend. She focuses her time outdoors, pushing her limits physically in many types of adventure recreation and growing, cooking, and eating delicious food.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I want to just talk a little bit about my experience as a local business owner and how I've been able to partner with Dr. Trese and all the students of the OU Student Farm. It is definitely a lot of the farmers that I work with are very near and dear to my heart, but this one is really special because so many of the student interns have actually come on to work in my kitchen and in my company, and actually have just added so much light and excitement. So to have cooks that can come in that really care about the food and then have also seen it from the ground up, that's the kind of experimental learning and then the progression into the working, into the work field in food. And so that has just been so special. But so the Pork and Pickles is a product line of pickled vegetables and butcher cuts. Just this past year, actually, I've sort of pivoted away from the product line and focused my work more on my work at Little Fish Brewing Company as the executive chef. But one thing that was so nice about working with the student farm and Dr. Trese was that we would really sit down and kind of project how much product I thought I would go through. So one of the crops that they always grew for me and just grew the best that I have ever seen from a local organic farm, it was cauliflower, and it was something that was a main pickled product of ours. So we would be able to sit down in the winters and just kind of say, well, how many pounds do you think you would need this time? And working closely, you know, would call me and say, okay, well, I think they're going to be ready in a few weeks, you know, and I would know that I would have so many heads of cauliflower coming. So that really close partnership of them knowing that they have a source to sell it to, and that knowing that like if they grow that much, it'll already be sold, and me knowing that like historically they've always been able to grow a crop and give it to me in that way. So that sort of partnership is what I love about working with small local farms, and they've done such an excellent job of being able to provide that to local businesses. Just trying to look at my notes because I'm always, I can talk forever, but to stay focused. But I really think also it being so close, I mean, it's like a mile away from where I'm cooking, where my kitchens are. And so to be able, it's like an open door policy. They're always welcoming us to stop down and check out what's growing. And in a lot of ways, I've been able to like walk through and meet the students and meet the rotating, you know, volunteers and interns there and really see what they're excited about and what they're growing. And it helps kind of inspire me to plan my menus and drive what, you know, if they have a huge bumper crop of beets going on, I've been able to like walk through and talk to the student farmers and talk to Dr. Trese and really be able to like look at it and get inspired for my menus and you know, plan my menus around what they have. So that's been just really like a great experience. He's also sent, Dr. Trese's also sent volunteers often. So not just as we kind of have a pathway of them to come to work in professional kitchens, but there's been times where we've had like roasting, they grew a bunch of red peppers for us. And we roasted them in a huge pepper roaster. It's like a long, like very labor intensive process. And so he was able to send the volunteers, interns to come get that hands-on experience to actually see, help with, you know, physically help process the fruits that they grew and learn about how we're going to use them in our sausage product, how we're going to use them on our menus. So just, I can't emphasize enough how much the connection and like the actual access the students have to me and my kitchen and what's going on, and then also the access that I have to be right down there on the farm, be able to go, you know, pull a carrot out and taste it and say, oh, okay, yeah, I think I want these on Wednesday. Can you harvest 50 pounds or something? And then I have seen so much. I've talked to a lot of, it's a small business, and I love my employees and get to know them. And I've been able to speak to them so much about how much of a pivotal moment in their career it is. So I know Mary touched on that and the quotes that she has from former students, but I really know, firsthand of multiple students that are like continuing their professional career into food, into agriculture, and a lot of them accredit it to their time spent right there at the student farm. So, I think I'm supposed to talk for longer, but I'd be happy to, answer questions at the end. But basically, it's incredibly valuable to us, and I see the value that it has for the students as well.
All right, thank you, Becky. Also from Little Fish, we have Shelby George. Shelby is a sustainably focused prep cook at Little Fish Brewing Company and former production manager at Pork and Pickles. She graduated from Ohio University in 2020 with a Bachelor of Food and Nutrition Sciences. During her time at the university, she interned at the Ohio Student Farm with Dr. Art Trese and 5 other students. This experience sparked her focus in small-scale agriculture and local food systems.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for introducing me. I'm Shelby. So I went to Ohio University and I took sustainable agriculture kind of on a whim. I didn't know much, what to expect. It wasn't required for my major or anything. I just kind of felt that I should do it. And the class was one of my favorite classes I've ever taken. It introduced me to the farm, Dr. Trese. That's how I met Becky and got this job at Little Fish, and how I worked at Pork and Pickles. And same as pretty much what everybody else has been saying, I could talk forever about how important and influential my time has been at the farm. And even after my internship was over, I continued to volunteer and stay in touch. And I found my best friends there. And so it just kind of speaks to something else, not just the importance of where our food is coming from, but having the experience in growing it, harvesting it with people, sharing meals with people that revolve around dishes that from start to finish you had a hand in. And that is so awesome. Food should be special. Eating, cooking, sharing, that should be very special, and it is. So working at Little Fish, I get to pickle a lot of produce that has come from the farm, and at certain times I get, a lot of onions in. I'm like, I planted these onions and now I'm pickling these onions. And then I run food to a table and they're like, wow, these onions are beautiful. And I'm like, guess what? I helped with that. And then, here we are. So getting to be a part of the whole process is just kind of inexplicably awesome. And I owe a lot to my time at the farm. I was creating a list earlier of all of the different kinds of produce that we've used both at Pork and Pickles and Little Fish. And I think it came up to 18 or 19 different kinds that we've used over the years. And what's really cool too, in terms of sustainability, is that we're able to pickle these things, make jams, roast and freeze the peppers, for example. So then most of the year we get to still reap the same benefits of high flavor, local organic produce, all year round. So we get to really extend that time. What else do I have? So like I said already, it's been super influential for a lot of different reasons. But when you get to plan with a farmer, kind of how Becky was saying, and sit down with Ari, have a cup of coffee and some cinnamon rolls, and you're like, okay, we're looking to do a ton of pickles. What do you have for me? What can I get from you? You connect to it a little bit deeper than just calling in an order and saying, I need this many carrots and this many onions and yada, yada. It's personal. And it's just so exciting to know where your food started. And same with the butchering that Becky and I do together. It's like the farm is just down the road and we know the person that raised these pigs, and then we get to respectfully prepare these dishes and serve them to people that we care about. So I don't know, I guess that's a lot of what I have. Something else that the farm taught me that I don't think has come up too much is knowledge about, like I said, processing and keeping it for the year, but also what to do with the parts that can't be used. So we're really, really careful about our composting at Little Fish and take it very seriously. And that's something that I got from my time at the farm. I guess that also kind of goes with maintaining healthy soils, obviously, that somebody else had mentioned. Yeah. Those are kind of most of my points. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions, but a lot of what I have to say is also what Becky says.
All right, thank you, Shelby. Finally, I'd like to welcome 2 more panelists from the student farm itself, Dr. Art Trese and Dr. David Rosenthal. If you were present for this morning's keynote presentation, then you're already familiar with Art. He's been growing vegetables for over 50 years and has been an advocate for organic practices from the beginning. Following a pre-med undergraduate degree, he pivoted to his true love, which is healthy plants. He completed an MS and PhD in plant pathology and taught plant biology courses at OU for 30 years until retiring in 2021. Over a span of 20 years, he expanded the plant biology learning gardens into a nearly 2-acre student-centered production farm. Currently, Art is serving as the unofficial volunteer farm manager at the Ohio Student Farm. David Rosenthal is an associate professor of environmental and plant biology who studies plant responses to environmental stressors. He is particularly interested in climate change impacts on plant and crop productivity. Prior to joining OU, Dr. Rosenthal studied soybean responses to climate change on large-scale industrial monoculture farms. David's interests have since broadened to include addressing challenges associated with small-scale, diversified, sustainable agriculture. One of those challenges is connecting local farms to local food systems, which I'm sure these 2 can tell you all about. Take it away, guys.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. I wasn't going to say a whole lot. And I did see your presentation this morning, Art, and that really gave me it inspired me, honestly, and so we can talk about that later. But since I'm the new kid on the block, I'm just going to say that there's a lot of legacy to follow, and I don't have a whole lot to add to what we've already heard about the farm. I'm one of its biggest champions. And I can see that we've produced some amazing folks. And when I say we, it's really been Art and sustainable agriculture, which is a class I'm teaching or trying to teach now. I'm starting to teach that every fall. But one of the few points I wanted to highlight from what I've heard earlier today and this morning is the idea that the farm is more than just a place to grow food. It's more than a place to learn about pests and pathogens. It's more than a place to develop a community of people who are like-minded about sustainable agriculture. And it's more than a place to connect the university to the community. It's really a place to develop a real bond between all of those groups I've talked about, to get a deeper and more valuable understanding of the importance of sustainable agriculture and food systems in small places like Athens, where we can make that work really well, and in larger places like New York City, where the challenges are fundamentally different. And so I just always like to highlight that the challenges that we have here at OU are different than we have in other places. But the bottom line is we all want to have sustainable food available to our local restaurants and processing plants to produce good sustainable food for the community and make it available to those who can't afford to buy organically grown fresh vegetables throughout the year. So I'm happy to entertain questions later. I don't have a whole lot to say except that I'm looking forward to try to keep this going. And thank you, Art, for continuing to be the volunteer, I would say official volunteer farm manager at the farm, because we couldn't do it without you.
Well, it's good to make it formal that I'm the official volunteer. That's good. I do really want to thank everyone who's here today speaking about the farm and supporting the idea of our farm and its impact on students and its accomplishments over the years. Very flattering in many ways. And I've, of course, really enjoyed your comments. I know that we were hoping that this group would really have an opportunity to answer questions related either from this morning's presentation or anyone who's here is just interested in how our farm has worked, what some of our challenges are, or whatever your questions might be. So I think what we were hoping is just to turn it over to conversation. Anyone who has any additional thoughts or questions?
Anyone with any questions can feel free to type it up in the chat, and I can field it to Art or any other panelists that you have questions for. But in the meantime, while people are typing up their questions, I've got one of my own, if you don't mind. So to Art and David, what are the challenges associated with operating a student farm?
Okay. How much time do we have?
Until someone else asks a question, I suppose.
Okay. All right. I would say, well, one thing that maybe doesn't like come to mind right away, but is the frequent turnover of people who are working there. And one, whether they're students in a class or they're interns or they're work study. I mean, this is true for much of a university and different operations. The culinary has the same thing, but there's a lot of training and learning and hands-on experience that you really see in someone who's been there for a while, and then one day you turn around and they're not there anymore, and there's a new novice that's got a shovel in their hand, and you're like, just a minute, before you do that, so there's it's one of the joys of it as well, of course, is to have people come who's really look at it and say, I don't know anything about what we're doing here, but I would love to stand here and learn as much as I can. And those opportunities are things I really look forward to. But it is when you were asking about challenges, it's and Becky has the same thing happens in any small business, that people come and they stay for a while and then they move on to something else. I think both of us are happy to know that our students and our employees often move on to just, continuing their career, building their, or finding other opportunities, that we follow them and look at their success. But that's the first thing that comes to my mind, is just the frequent, starting over at the very beginning of training, teaching.
I guess I can add to that and say that on a sort of looking out in terms of sort of a bigger, maybe a larger scale issue is something that we were going to have a speaker talk about in general, which is getting institutional support for places like farms on campuses, which is certainly a challenge, which is illustrated by the fact that we have a volunteer manager. And the farm certainly couldn't do at the farm what we're doing now without that. But one of the I think one of the upsides about the farm that's not spoken about enough, especially at Ohio University, is that we're right on campus. I mean, I've been at large universities that have huge areas to do research, but you have to get in a car and drive 10 miles to get to the plot to do the farm work. But here students can hop on a blue bus and get to the farm in a few minutes, or if they're patient enough, they can walk 20 minutes and get there. So I think that's a huge advantage that we have. So we have challenges for sure. And the idea of turnover is one of them. What are we going to do when Art decides to move to Florida?
Probably come and kidnap me, put me in the trunk, drive me back to Ohio.
I would never do that. Oh, I see some questions popping up.
Yeah, so Elaine asks, could you talk a little bit more about how the farm has been funded over the years? Originally, was it funded through plant biology?
I can. Originally, so Jim Cavender developed the farm, the course that he was teaching as a Tier 3 course, which some of you associated with OU know that that's a senior level course, a special like multidisciplinary course was the notion. And it came with every section of it that was taught came with $2,000 of funding in an account that faculty could use to, in whatever way they wanted, to enrich their courses. So I think part of his financial support was through teaching. Every time he taught the course, there was an extra pool of money. In most of my operation of it, until Teresa Moran got involved, was from teaching awards that came with a financial part of the teaching award was, here's a couple $1,000 or something like that. And I would spend that money to purchase whatever we needed. So it was really, just scraping along, doing whatever you could afford. I laugh. I know Becky or Shelby knows that there's a lot of stuff on the farm that was just sort of collected in case we could use it one day. And it's never really had any extra money. It's always been, if we can find some, a way to purchase this, we can do it. And if we can't, we just can't do it. So until Teresa came and started working closely with the dean in the food studies program, there was very little funding. And then in that case, the dean was, well, Teresa would basically go to the dean and said, Art and I know that we need to buy 2 rototillers. Could you give us the money for that? And he might say, yes, I can give you the money for that. Or we need a little bit of money to do this expansion or improve. We need a washing station. Could you give us a little money for that? So there's never been a line item outside of a $1,000 per year that our department has committed to supporting the farm, which overall, on the scale of the farm and the work that we do, that's doesn't really cover the cost. So it's really where one of our weaknesses is that we can't build a robust program and plan it out 5 years and sort of work to, to add pieces to it and put it together if there isn't underlying funding.
Right, absolutely, Art. And so I've submitted proposals to get somebody funded to work at the farm for just that reason, because that's sort of a critical part of that. And so, well, OU has gone through some tough times, so we'll see what happens in the next few years, but that's what we're working towards. The good news is, though, that we were able to generate enough sales last year so that we can support 2 and possibly even 3 interns. I'm not going to say for sure a third, but so we can support interns to help us. But two interns, as Art will tell you, is not enough to run a farm adequately, because there's just always so much to do on any given day. But we've had a lot of fortunate folks who are interested in volunteering, and so that's been really helpful. And another way we fund the farm, if you will, and the work is that the students, work-study students work there. And so that's free labor for us from that sense. But it's not, again, it's high turnover. It's not guaranteed. I had a student very interested 2 weeks ago about working at the farm who no longer is in my work-study pool, so I'm not sure where they went. But this is a student who hadn't started working yet. So my point is that it's hit or miss. So we're lucky to have such a great, deep sort of trough of really dedicated students who want to come back year after year, actually. So that helps.
Well, luckily, it seems like you might have a volunteer in the chat. Isabel says, I took the sustainable agriculture course last fall and absolutely loved it. Are there any specific volunteer opportunities the farm is offering this spring so that I have an excuse to be back?
Yes. Any nice day, Isabel. Yeah, really, it's now that it's warmed up a bit and spring break, with the end of spring break, I anticipate relatively nice weather, increasingly nice weather. So I would say just stop out at the farm. I'll be there. And, whenever you feel like it is pretty much the answer. there was also a question just about some of our challenges, I think. And one thing David has applied or is working with part of an application looking for an opportunity to create some cold storage at the farm. Because it turns out, I mean, many times you probably wouldn't think about it if you're just, I'm going to grow vegetables at a farm and I'm going to find somebody to buy them and we'll pick them and put them in boxes or bags and we'll drop them off wherever they're going. And, especially when you're using student labor, their schedule isn't that you can just ask them to be there, the hour before somebody's ready to take your delivery. So we have to work our harvest around what's available for as far as labor goes. And then a lot of fresh produce just really doesn't last at all if it's not in a refrigerator, right? If you pick lettuce or spinach and you're like, well, I'll just leave it in my car for a few hours. That's not a good plan. So some sort of walk-in cold room would make the whole sort of production, sales, and marketing part of it far more practical.
Right, that's right, Art. And so what some listeners might not realize is that we don't have electricity at the farm. And so my proposals have been couched with the notion that we would power we would have solar power to run this cooler because we're effectively an off-grid farm. And actually, that whole setup is marginally more than it would cost to run electricity to the farm, which of course would be ideal. But there's very few places that will fund infrastructure in that way. Whether it's the USDA or NSF, they don't like to put up phone poles and build houses. They're more interested in putting people to work, I guess, in different ways. So yeah, absolutely, right. Basic stuff, a pole barn, electricity, and a cooler.
And I guess if we were really looking at hiring somebody, I mean, right now the vehicle that works at the farm is my truck, right? So if I retired, drove away with my truck, do we hire somebody and say, by the way, you need to go buy a truck to be hired for this job? Or so it would be nice to have a vehicle that is part of the farm's infrastructure, because there's a lot of driving around to deliver stuff. Anyway, we're just daydreaming about what it would be nice to have.
Thank you. Now, question for Becky. How does Pork and Pickles and Little Fish plan for the seasonality of sourcing local produce? How do you respond to increased demand for a product, for example, if it's no longer in season, and what additional labor or time is involved in sourcing locally?
Yeah, sure. What additional labor and time? Tons. I mean, you have to actually really care about your business plan has to include supporting the local agricultural community. And I mean, I think Shelby touched on it, but it's much easier to we still, obviously we can't get everything locally. So we do still have these wholesale accounts of just produce providers and stuff. And it's, 3 days a week, you can just click through their app or pick up the phone and leave a message saying, I need 50 pounds of this, 20 pounds of that. And a lot of restaurants do all their ordering that way. So that takes, 15 minutes versus myself, my sous chefs, even some of my cooks. It's all day, every day. You're not getting one delivery, you're getting 16 deliveries. Every delivery that comes in the middle of the work shift is interrupting you rolling the pasta that you were rolling, say. On the bright side of that, because we love it and we do it, is we absolutely we love getting deliveries from all our local farmers because it gives us a chance to check in with them and chat with them and have these connections that we wouldn't get if it's just one delivery driver from a wholesale producer or purveyor. So a lot of extra work goes into it, but it's incredibly rewarding and fulfilling work and makes our jobs feel so much more like we're part of the community as well. How we deal with demand from customers about you had strawberry shortcake on and now you don't have strawberry shortcake on and we really want the strawberry shortcake is like, well, good news, it'll be back next June. So I think that for us, like, that's to say also is good news, it'll be on next June, but check out this awesome thing that we just put on with the blackberries that are coming or something. You know, it's like, because we're using local ingredients and really driving our menus around the seasonality, every month, every week, there's something new. And so if you're working with a team of creative and excited cooks, like, we're already over tomatoes, like well before tomato season's over, because everything on our menu revolves around tomatoes during that time. But we'll be really excited for the delicata squash that's going to come on. So it's about, it's kind of about framing it and selling it to our customers in a way that says, oh yeah, you know, those are gone, but check out this new thing that we have. And I think that honestly, in a lot of ways, it makes it easier to write a menu because you don't have every ingredient available to you. You have the ingredients that are, the list of ingredients I'm choosing of putting on a menu is the ones that are available right now from our local farms. I find writing menus in the wintertime to be a lot harder because then I'm sourcing from all, you know, I'm sourcing from all over the country or even Mexico, and I can just get anything in. And then how do I even choose what to work with? So.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you, David, for handling some of those questions in the chat. But we've got a couple more questions coming in about the student farm, so try to hit everything if we've got the time. So first, what are other plans for the future of the farm?
Well, that's I have the realistic plan and I have the dream plan. Right now, the plan is to try to at the very least maintain what we have in the short term. The long term is to grow it to be more or less self-sustainable, but that requires a lot of things to go our way in the next few years. I think the most important one is finding and recruiting and hiring and having funding for somebody to run the farm, so that we can have a dedicated person to do the kinds of things like plan ahead. I mean, real, you know, large, not even that large scale farms, but like farms around town the farm managers will plan 2 or 3 years ahead of time what they're going to grow and have specific plans about how that's going to work out. If you have the capacity to do that, or to do that effectively, you have to be on the farm all the time and be able to get a sense of where things are and plan ahead. And so that's a challenge. We also have plans to continue to integrate the farm and its experiential learning through collaboration with other departments and other colleges, and that's going to keep happening. But that again depends on the notion that there's somebody there all the time, because if I get an email saying I'd like to do this at 3 p.m. next week and I'm not available, then I can't do it, right? So frequently I'm like, well, Art, are you available at 3 p.m. next week? And so it all kind of centers around this idea of that. So that's moving forward what we're trying to do, and I will keep trying to do as far as I can. And I see Mary has something to say now. All right. I hope that answers your question.
I actually didn't mean to raise my hand. I clicked on the wrong thing. But to follow up David's comments, I would just add that, you know, I think one of the things that all of us that are related to the Ohio Student Farm in various ways have been doing is just advocacy as well, you know, regarding securing the funding that we need for a farm manager as a way to sustain this in support of experiential learning for our students. We are a higher education institution, so the educational value of this space, I think, needs to be at the forefront of the powers that be that are allocating funding to high impact learning. So I think, the stories that we're telling today and the testimonials from our alumni and current students, as well as the faculty and other community partners associated with it, are really critical to the long-term success and viability of the farm.
I would make just a quick observation. I think, so one of the challenges we've had at Ohio University is because the farm has been there for 40 years, relatively restricted to the learning garden for quite a while, but then when I took over, gradually expanding and doing more and more, that when we ask, can we have some funding to make this, to continue this, the response is often something along the lines, it's already there. I don't know why I need to fund it. Someone actually said when Trese was asking, what are we going to do when Art retires? The answer was, oh, Art will keep doing it. He's not going anywhere. So anyway, my feeling is that sometimes it's easier if you have a blank slate and a group of people get around a table and say, this is a brilliant idea. We ought to have a farm. And then they're like, we just need to go find funding. And funding appears because it's a new idea. It's a brand new concept. And people are taking ownership because it's their idea. And then they put the money together and they get the farm started. Whether it continues or not, like is that long-term funding or short-term funding is often a really important point. But I feel sometimes that we're kind of caught in a place where it's already there. And it's hard to find, at least in terms of a unit at the university will say, I will take a chunk out of our budget to support the farm. What Mary is saying, I think, is about the only workable strategy is to try to gather a number of different units who will contribute something to develop a long-term plan. But it's been somewhat frustrating to get responses that sort of come down to, it's already there, it's already working. I don't know what credit my unit would get if we gave you money, because we're not building it. We won't really ever be able to say we own it. We just gave you money to keep it going. It's just sort of my perception anyway of human nature, of wanting to be involved in the kicking off and the creating of something more than we want to be in just supporting something that's ongoing.
I see a question that's related that might be, it's actually from Becky. She says, is the farm able to accept outside funding, or does it have to be allocated to the university? So there's been conversations about essentially setting it up as a foundation to try to get donations, right during fundraising. The trick is that I think you can't start that unless there's money in the account, which creates a sort of a circular problem. So the answer is yes. Right now, we do have an account, and if you write a check that says Ohio Student Farm on it, there's a place I can deposit that check. But not in the sense that's what that is. But I think setting up a larger sort of foundation fundraising would be a great way to go, and I think that's where we're going to move to eventually. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
All right, I believe we're about out of time, but I want to go ahead and ask one last question from the chat. Does the farm ever give fresh produce to the dining halls?
Well, sometimes we sell it to culinary services, and we've also, through CFI, provided it to the nutrition program. In fact, Dane Salaback has prepped food, and then it goes to Cat's Cupboard. And Cat's Cupboard is available to anybody on campus who can get to Baker Center. And so our produce, usually as a prepared item, is there, although we've also had squash and potatoes and other items brought there. but not directly to the student halls, only to the different dining places. So it's sold typically at Nelson and at Jeff Marketplace, and then Culinary Services will buy some, and then it becomes part of that. And I'm not sure how they distribute it.
Yeah, I would add that much less than we were sort of anticipated, but really goes back to what Becky was saying about the additional challenges. And when you really think of, Becky has her business, and to buy from local farmers, it's all the extra work of tracking them and what do they have and how much do they have and how much do they want for it? What's the price? For the university, they have a far bigger shopping list every week. And for our farm, it's such a tiny little amount. And to do the extra work to contact us, for us to drop it off, give an invoice, for somebody to explain how are these 4 baskets of tomatoes sitting here? Like, oh, those came from the student farm. And they're like, okay, what are we doing with them? Anyway, you can sort of imagine the smoothness of their operation being there's one person sits in an office, goes to Produce One, places an order for everything they need that week. It's computer generated. And then if we show up and say, we have 3 boxes of peppers, like, okay, I don't know. Okay, but it's more or less, we'll do it this time. I don't know how to say it, but it just is a challenge given our scale and our variability, what we have. We can't even say, we will have 3 boxes of peppers every week for the next 12 weeks. Would you incorporate that into your ordering sheet? Because we won't. We will have 3 boxes of peppers sometimes, and sometimes somebody else will have bought them. And are we out of questions, Jordan?
I believe that's about all of them, yeah.
Okay.
Any closing comments you'd like to leave us with?
I would like to close by saying thank you to everyone for their involvement in the student farm, their support of the student farm, and their wonderful comments about it. Having heard all of those wonderful things, I will stay as a volunteer for 1 more year.
Outstanding.
You
Officially.
convinced me. All right.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. For me, it's also just a wonderful place to bring my grandchildren. We have a tiny little garden in our house, but every time they come, so one of the things we do is we go visit and spend an afternoon at Grandpa's farm, as they know it anyway. All right. Well, Jordan, if it's okay, I will say goodbye to everyone, or if you want to.
No, fine with me. Go ahead and take over.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming today and listening and asking questions and being involved and interested in the operation of the Ohio Student Farm. And I hope to see you there, hear from you again. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day, guys.